She told her partner, "We need to think about whether Ember can stay." They almost made a fatal mistake. Annika Strandberg had been a child life specialist for 14 years. She had seen more than most parents ever would. She trusted that. She had built her whole approach to motherhood around what she knew, around what experience had taught her body to recognize in a beat. 10-month-old Anwen had been the center of that approach since the morning she was born. Ember was a 4-year-old vizsla who had shared the house since before Anwen existed. He had never shown anything but patience with her. The ear-grabbing, the shrieking, the lurching of a child learning to walk. He was the kind of dog people described as gentle, to the point of being a little dull, which is why what happened that morning in their coastal cottage in early September made no sense. It was the kind of week where nothing was supposed to happen. Anwen had been mildly sick 4 days earlier, the kind of thing that moves through everyday care without alarm. By that morning she was eating soft food again, walking, the fever long broken. By every measure, Annika knew she was getting better. It started in the open kitchen. Anwen woke fussy, the way babies do when something is not quite right but they cannot say what. Annika fed her, changed her, held her. Within 20 minutes, Ember was sniffing the baby's hairline and then her neck, methodically, not threatening, not aggressive, just there, immovable, his attention locked on the child in a way it had never been before. Annika watched from the rattan sofa, coffee in hand, and felt the first thread of unease. "Ember, go lie down." He lifted his eyes to her and stayed exactly where he was. Anwen began to cry. He didn't back away. He leaned closer. That detail would matter. She didn't know that yet. She set the coffee down. He was holding the position for 2 full seconds at a time, then pulling back to look at her, directly flat on, then lowering his face again. He was reporting something. She would understand that later. In the moment, she only saw a vizsla too close to a crying toddler, and her body registered the size differential before her mind caught up. It happened again 20 minutes later. Anwen had quieted, was sitting on the salt-bleached pine with the wooden stacking rings, and Ember crossed the open kitchen in the same deliberate way and lowered his head again. Annika pulled him back by the collar. He turned immediately and sat beside her, calm, composed, watching the child. She filed it as odd. She noted it. She did not yet understand that he was not asking for attention. He was filing his own report. In 14 years of work, Annika had seen dogs upset children before. She had seen the pattern. Stress behavior. Resource guarding, overstimulation around a crying infant. She had seen families dismiss warning signs until it was too late, and she had written notes about exactly the kind of fixation she was now watching unfold in her own open kitchen. The size differential alone, the weight of a large animal against the small body of a toddler, made her stomach tighten in a way she recognized as professional instinct. She crossed the room and put herself between them. Ember moved around her. He wasn't growling. He wasn't stiff, but he would not leave Anwen alone. Henrik came in from the next room and watched for 30 seconds. "Should we put him out back?" Annika was already nodding. "Just for a few hours, until she's calmer." Her mother-in-law, who had come to help that week, said it from the hallway without being asked. "You're right. You can't take that risk with a baby." They had all reached the same conclusion. That felt, at the time, like confirmation. She had used the exact words she would have used in a clinical note. She had the training. She had the years. She had the framework that told her, with professional certainty, what she was watching. She did not yet know that the framework itself was the trap. The back beach door clicked shut. Anwen stopped crying almost immediately, which felt like proof. Annika picked her up and held her and felt the quiet of a problem solved. She set her down on the salt-bleached pine near the pacifier and went to fold laundry in the next room, the breast milk bag on the counter beside her. Ember was scratching at the back beach door within 10 minutes. Not barking, scratching, a continuous, focused, rhythmic scraping that did not stop. Henrik let him back in. More out of frustration than understanding, he went directly to the doorway of the room where Anwen now lay, positioned himself at the threshold, and would not move. Annika came to stand beside Henrik. She looked at Ember standing over the sleeping baby. She looked at how still he was, how focused. He had never done this before, not once. "He's fixating on her," she said. Henrik nodded slowly. They had both reached the same wrong conclusion in the same wrong way. Neither of them asked why he was starting now. They moved him to the back bedroom that night. Door closed. He scratched at it for 4 hours without stopping. Henrik called his cousin about temporary boarding. Annika did not argue. She had seen too much, she thought, to argue. She wrote in her journal that night, "I almost gave the dog away today." She underlined the word almost. She did not know yet how much that underlining would matter. Anwen woke at 2 in the morning, not crying, small sounds, not distressed. Annika gave her 10 minutes on the breast milk bag. The sounds did not change. She turned over. At 3:34 in the morning, she heard Ember hit the back bedroom door. Not scratching. Impact. The full weight of a grown dog throwing himself against a hollow core door. Then again. Then again. She was moving before the thought finished. Down the hall, the door shaking in its frame. She grabbed the handle, and Ember pushed past her before she could speak and ran, not walked, directly to the room where Anwen lay. Annika followed. Ember was at the crib, both paws on the rail, his nose pressed to the child's face. Anwen was quiet. The wrong kind of quiet. Annika reached in. The body in her hands was limp and warm and wrong. She turned on the light. The color in Anwen's face was off. Not the gray she knew to fear, but a faint pallor around the lips. Hands slightly cool. Breathing even but shallow. She picked her up, and the limpness was too much, just slightly too much, and she was already reaching for her phone before she finished forming the thought. Henrik came down the hall behind her in his socks. He took one look at the way she was holding the child and did not ask any questions. He picked up the keys from the rattan sofa and opened the back beach door. Ember did not follow them out. He stood at the doorway watching the car start in the driveway, his outline visible in the porch light, his weight leaning toward the gate, as if even now he was still trying to come. At the emergency clinic 40 minutes later, the readings came back. Concentration had reached 1.2% volume. The diagnosis was natural gas leak inside wall, the kind of slow, invisible slide that does not announce itself, that produces no dramatic symptom, that depletes a child without any external signal a parent would think to look for. The gas utility investigator who admitted them was someone who specialized in leak detection science. She read the chart and looked up. This was being detected, she said, by something. Anwen was not symptomatic to you yet. By the time a parent sees this, we are usually managing a crisis. You brought her in within the window where we could correct it without consequence. Annika told her about Ember, about the face pressed to the child's mouth, about the scratching at the back beach door, about the impact at 3:34 in the morning. The doctor wrote something on the chart and set her pen down. Dogs detect mercaptan additive at concentrations thousands of times below human sensory threshold, she said. In a child whose condition is shifting across hours, that signature is changing. He has been reading a chemical profile that is invisible to anyone in your house. He was telling you. You filed it as aggression because you have a framework for aggression. You do not have a framework for what he was actually doing. Another 9 minutes, and we would be having a very different conversation. Annika sat with that for a long time, the face pressed to Anwen's mouth each morning. Not aggression. Breath detection. The refusal to leave after every correction. Not defiance. An alarm that could not turn itself off. The scratch at the back beach door. Not impatience. The sound of him trying to get back to his post. The vigil at the threshold over the sleeping child. Not dominance. Medical surveillance. The impact at 3:34. Not destruction. A guardian locked outside by the person he was trying to protect. He had been reading what she could not see since the moment Anwen woke fussy that morning. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense? Until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. They drove home in the dark. Anwen was stable, drowsy, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Henrik carried her inside. Annika opened the back beach door. Ember came in without drama. He walked through the open kitchen, past the pacifier, past the wooden stacking rings on the salt-bleached pine, and crossed to where Henrik had set Anwen down. He lay close beside her, the full length of his body against her side. Annika sat on the salt-bleached pine across from them. She did not reach for her phone. She did not move to the open kitchen. She watched the slow rise and fall of her child's chest. She watched Ember's ribs rise and fall in time with it. She watched the place on his shoulder where the wood of the bedroom door had left a faint mark from the impact at 3:34. She did not say anything aloud. She said one thing in her head, the same thing over and over, the only thing that made sense to say, "I'm sorry, Ember." He did not move for a moment. Then he pushed his nose against her hand and settled again beside the sleeping child. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. She stayed on the salt-bleached pine until the morning began to gray in the window. She watched the breast milk bag blink its small green light at slow intervals. She listened for the breath that, the night before, had almost stopped without anyone in the house except Ember understanding what it meant. Anwen is wearing a continuous monitor now. Her numbers are stable. Most nights, the monitor does its job. Every night, Ember lies at the foot of her bed anyway, because the numbers can change and he is still watching. He has not stopped watching once in all the months since. There is a thing she thinks about often now, sitting alone in the kitchen in the early hour before the rest of the house wakes. The framework she had built across 14 years of professional training was real. It was earned. It was, in its own context, correct. But it had been built from the cases she had seen. It had been blind by its nature to the cases she had never been in the room for. Ember had been working from a different framework, a framework that had nothing to do with anything she had been taught, a framework that began at the level of a single molecule and ended at the foot of a sleeping child. She had treated his framework like noise. He had treated hers like a danger. Only one of them had been correct. She has not written about it. She does not know how. The cases she has filed across her career are organized by category, indexed by symptom, ordered by diagnostic clarity. There is no field on the form for the thing Ember did. There is no category for the kind of attention he was paying. There is no symptom that captures the sound of a hollow core door under the shoulder of a vizsla who had figured out before any of them that the small body on the other side of the door was running out of time. She thinks she will figure out how to write it eventually. For now, she only sits with the knowledge that, on the night it mattered most, the only competent professional in the house had been the one without a badge. The next story involves a dog who changed his behavior 3 weeks before a diagnosis no one saw coming. Ember lay beside the sleeping child, his back against a radiator, his face toward the only window in the room.